Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today I'll be reviewing the Meisho movie Realization, Yojinbo Mandalorian and Grogu from Star Wars. Now, the movie Realization line from Tamashii Nations is like a what-if sort of thing, where what if Star Wars or Marvel or other properties were in sort of like feudal Japan style, so like all effectively samurai style. And this is my first figure from the line, just because I think the Mandalorian's design is really cool and really lends itself to that sort of lone wolf and cub sort of style. I mean, that's pretty much what it was originally based on anyway, just aesthetically and stylistically. So it makes sense to put these two together like this. I believe this is the third time they've done Mandalorian in this style. There was one from like season 1, one a little bit after that in sort of like the Beskar armor, and then this one, which was I think a Tamashii Nation store exclusive, where it's more weathered and his accessories are a little bit different. But anyway, taken out of the box, we're going to see what he comes with. So we've got the figure himself, we've got a little Grogu, we've got a carry pouch, we've got a few alternate hands, we've got his jetpack, we've got a standard looking katana, as well as a black saber katana, which is pretty cool. We've got his hunting rifle as well as the Beskar spear, and on the back we've got his cape. So it's a pretty good loadout. It's honestly a bit more than I expected, because the spear seemed like such a minor thing in the grand scheme of the narrative that I wouldn't really expect it to be here, but it's nice to have, as well as the jetpack and cape. But effectively, he always sort of needs to come with Grogu, blaster. Oh, he does have his blaster as well. I forgot to mention that. His blaster, the hunting rifle works as well, and the black saber is a pretty cool addition as well. But anyway, taken out of the box and put on a display, here he is, and he looks really good. The armor design works very well for him. To be fair, it's pretty much exactly like his armor from the show. It's just with a new sort of feudal Japanese flair to it. Like, a lot of the elements are the same. They haven't had to change it that much. So like the crest on his right shoulder is there, but the design of that shoulder armor has changed. A lot of his chest armor is incredibly similar. The boot design and the sort of asymmetry of his design is very consistent. Around his skirt is probably where it's changed the most, because he doesn't really have that sort of like angular skirt piece, but they did change it in interesting ways, like it's got a crest on the far right as well. But the differences between his left and right leg are consistent, as well as his left and right arms. And that's made more apparent next to the Mafex Mandalorian, and that one is a very show accurate figure, so you can sort of see the differences in line with each other. It does also show that the movie Realization figure is pretty damn large, and that is consistent with the Grogu accessory as well. So whereas Figuarts and Mafex and things like that I think are around sort of 112 scale here or there, I think that the movie Realization is probably more around 111, 110 scale, probably more about 110 scale. So they might not pair with a lot of figurines. And speaking of other figurines, here he is next to Jedi Toys Ryu, as well as the Mega Man X model kit. And he looks really good. I do like the metallic colors they've chosen, as well as the weathering on the figure. It makes him look very real. The joints are decently well covered up, so because of the armored design, he looks less like an action figure and more like a premium collectible, and more like a statue in certain poses as well, so it works quite well. And I would say the same is true of the Mafex figure, which I will review at some point as well, where that looks pretty much screen accurate, and depending on your lighting conditions and how you've posed him, looks exactly like the show. So that's really cool. But right now we're talking about the movie Realization figure, and it just, the sculpt and design and everything like that, it's just absolutely spot on, looks fantastic. And I don't know, we might as well go into posability, so then we can go into accessories and everything like that. So he's got a ball joint at the head and neck. When you move the head, it moves his sort of like collar piece as well. It does pop out a lot, but you can pop it back in thanks to some easy to locate ball joints. His shoulder armor are in ball joints, so they can move out. His arm can move all the way around. There is a sort of elbow swivel as well as a bend at the elbow, hinge at the wrist, very similar to SH Figure Arts. There's not really a butterfly, but the arm can move out about that far. The torso can rotate a little bit around, not a lot. It is limited by some of his armor. His skirt is a soft plastic, so it can move out of the way in poses. He can kick forward and back that far, which is pretty good. He can do the splits that far. There's a thigh swivel and bend at the knee, as well as a pivot at the ankle and bend at the toes. Although the bend at the toes doesn't seem that useful because the sandal still stays like as a solid piece. But he's generally pretty good. My main criticism of his posability would be that the lower half feels very loose and it's hard to get him into poses because of that. But generally, if you work at it, it's fine. His Grogu is also a posable figure and he looks really, really good. I do like the sort of like top knot design, and the robe that Grogu had is already very, very Japan style, so I think it works quite well. He does also have some posability, so the head can move side to side and the arms can move up and down. They are a little bit tight. There's a waist swivel and his feet can move as well. But you're not going to get Grogu into any dynamic poses by any means. But with all his accessories, you can get some pretty okay poses out of him. I do think that the amount of hands you get is incredibly limited and does hurt the figure in the long run, because it's just fists, trigger finger hands, and holding hands. And the holding hands aren't made for the spear, they're made more for the katanas. And the trigger figure hands feel like they're made more for the gun and not the rifle. So it's a little bit annoying. It's hard to get him into some like really good dynamic poses, but I think the aesthetic more than makes up for it. So that's nice to have. If you put on the cape, that also helps as well. It bulks up the frame quite a bit, because sometimes looking at the neck can look a bit weird as well, because it feels like something's missing. So the cape does a nice job of that. The wire is very thin in the cape, and the cape is quite heavy, so it's hard to pose it just right. But it does some okay sort of like windswept poses, not just like super dynamic poses. But all of his accessories look good, and he can get into some okay enough poses, just nothing super dynamic or actiony or super elegant because of the limitations of the hands. But he is overall pretty good. I do like the aesthetic changes in like the Darksaber, his hunting rifle, and the spear. The jetpack is a really, really nice addition as well. It looks so over-engineered, it's almost insane, but it does look cool. You can also hang the Grogu satchel around his body, just like in the show, and it looks pretty good. I'm not sure what to do with this figure at times, just because his range of motion isn't super good and the hand options aren't great, so I don't really think about what I can and can't do with this figure. If you want to put the hunting rifle on, the cape needs to come off. If you want to put the jetpack on, the hunting rifle can't be there. The cape can, but it gets in the way, so it's weird. I'm not a huge fan of how they've done it here, but the aesthetic is absolutely incredible, and that's realistically why you get this figure. It's because the aesthetic is something very cool and very unique, and it suits him very, very well. But just not my favorite figure to play with. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I will see you all next time.